What is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for being here. Super excited at all. Today's structure is as follows. We're going to have our guest speaker. We're going to do our interview. We're going to do a outro after that. And then, as always, hang out, network. We'll be here all night. So without further adu, we're going to have an amazing interview with Stephen Haring. Stephen's a full-time investor. He's the Northeast leader of Pace Morby's Sub-2 community. If you don't know what that is, you'll find out shortly. He's a co-founder of ManifestAgents.com, which is a community of investor-friendly agents in the area. And I met Stephen at this meetup a year-ish ago, and we hit off with a great conversation, and it's really cool to see how far he's come and what he's doing now. So tell us a little bit about you, please.
Thanks for the introduction, Cole. So my name is Stephen Haring. I've been a full-time real estate investor for a little over 2 years. I am one of the Northeast leaders of Pace Morby's Sub-2 community. Does anyone familiar with Pace? Sub-2.
Sub-2?
Sub-2. So
what does that
Sub-2
stand for?
Short for Subject to. So does anyone know who Pace Morby is? You put your hands up. Well, if you don't, you can do a quick Google search. It will pop up his YouTube channel, and he is right now probably just completely trailblazing the space of creative financing. When I joined his mentorship a little over a year ago, there was about 2,000 members in the mentorship. We just cracked over 12,000. And a big reason for that growth is because of the ever-changing real estate market. Interest rates being at 8% right now, continuing to go up. We got to figure out ways as investors and in the space to mitigate, that risk of the rising interest rates, right? And learning creative financing, which includes strategies like subject to seller financing, novations, hybrids, which is a combination of seller financing and subject to, wraps, lease options. When you learn these additional strategies, you're adding more tools to your tool belt as an investor so that when you are underwriting deals, you're not leaving deals on the table because it doesn't fit your traditional cash or investor loan type of deal. Does that make sense? Okay, so I co-founded a community called Manifest Agents, and our community, what we do is we teach real estate agents how to be investor friendly. So one of the issues that I saw in the real estate investment space is every time I would join a local Facebook group around real estate investing, so let's just say Lehigh Valley real estate investors, right? I would constantly see posts within these groups saying, I'm looking for an investor friendly agent. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, so there's not a community or a dedicated group solely focused on connecting real estate agents that are investor friendly to other real estate professionals. I also saw an issue as the market started shifting with the increasing interest rates that agents didn't know how to adjust. And so I thought to myself, well, this could be a perfect opportunity to create a community that can help teach agents these newer strategies involving creative financing so that they can become investor friendly and open more areas of opportunity for revenue. So that's how the Manifest Agents community was born. And obviously with Pace's cosign, I mean, we're growing pretty rapidly. We actually just hosted a meetup in the South Jersey, Philly area, completely new market, and we sold out. There was over 70 attendees at the event. So, that just shows you the interest of creative financing and why you definitely want to get on the bandwagon now, because like I was telling Cole earlier, in this market, if we do not adapt, we die, right? So,
So let's boil it down, right? What is creative finance? If somebody's here and they're like, what do you mean? Don't I just go buy a house, talk to a lender, and be done? Like,
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So it's essentially being creative in financing your purchase of the property. That's as simplest definition that you can get in regards to creative financing. For example, you're talking to a seller who owns a property free and clear, means there's no loan attached to the property at this point. And the seller's like, look, I I want this price. And you're running your numbers and you're like, man, this just isn't going to work. I'm not going to be able to cash flow. If I get a DSCR loan to buy this property, it's not going to cash flow. Deal's not going to work. So what you say to yourself is, you know what? Let me restructure the conversation with the owner and see if they would be willing to become the bank, right? And what that essentially means is you're structuring the deal as a seller finance, where instead of you getting a loan and paying another lender every month, you're paying directly to the seller every month. And the terms that you negotiate is what you pay. So I hope that answers the question, right?
Yeah. How many people here have done a seller finance deal before? Anybody? Okay. Awesome.
All right, so you're probably asking yourself, well, how the hell do you find a seller who's willing to actually become the bank? Where do you find these deals? How do you approach the conversation?
Yeah.
What I always tell agents or other investors is whenever you approach the conversation with the seller in regards to structuring a deal for seller finance, it's normally attached to gain, right? You want to show the seller that they can make more money by being the bank rather than just selling it to you straight cash, right? So how I structure the conversation with sellers is I say, listen, I'm going to upgrade you from being the owner and seller. I'm going to upgrade you to the next step up, which is being the bank. And when I do my underwriting, I'll put together my terms, what the amortization schedule is going to be like, if there's going to be interest attached to the terms, what that monthly payment is going to be like. And I present it in a way that shows them with the interest over time, this is how much money they're going to make if they sell or finance the deal to me in comparison to a straight cash offer. And whenever I present the terms to the seller, the cash offer is going to be a lot less, obviously, than what the seller finance terms are going to be, right? And so that's how I have the conversations with the seller.
That's so good. And just how you mentioned, like, it's all on how you frame it and how you pitch it. Absolutely love that. So good.
Yeah, so now we'll get to subject 2. So who here is familiar with subject 2? All right, so subject 2 is taking over the existing loan via subject 2. That's what subject 2 means. It's not a loan assumption. Big difference. When you talk to a lot of agents who are not educated in subject 2, and you present an offer doing a deal via subject 2, a lot of times you'll get rebuttals on your offer with an agent saying, oh, I spoke to my broker on record and they said subject 2 is illegal, right? It is in fact not illegal. That's the biggest thing I want to educate everybody on. Taking over an existing loan via subject 2 is not illegal. The IRS, if you go to the IRS, and I can present these links and resources for you guys to pitch your sellers on. IRS has a dedicated section that specifically talks about the taxation doing a subject to deal. If you go to the federal HUD website, there's a line item on the HUD that specifically says subject to. If you talk to an investor-friendly title company that has done subject to deals, they will also tell you it is in fact legal. The biggest difference between an assumption of a loan and taking over a loan via subject to is when you assume a loan, you have to go through that qualification process, right? Meaning they're gonna qualify you based on your credit, based on your income, like you're any other traditional lending. With subject to, you are bypassing all of that. You're taking over the existing loan in place, and you're not qualifying for that loan. And you're probably like, well, does the lender hate that? Yeah, they hate it, right? Like lenders don't want that, right? So the biggest thing when you're doing these subject to deals and you're pitching this type of deal structure, the biggest part of your conversation is going to be the education aspect of it. You're going to have to educate the agent. You're also going to have to educate if you're direct to seller, right? That's number one, is the education aspect of it. So, any other questions about subject 2?
I love it. But
So here I am. I'm an agent. I got a house. It's $100,000, right? It's owned by a guy who's got a mortgage that's locked in at the 3% interest rates. I love it. It's a perfect candidate. The seller's on board with subject to, and of course, this loan, the lender's like, sorry, we're going to trigger the due on sale clause if you buy it. How do you negotiate that?
The lender never knows.
Okay.
You never go to a lender and you say, I want to buy this property subject to, right? When you're doing the transaction and you're doing the deed transfer, you're doing it in a way where you're trying to avoid the due on sale clause, right? So you're doing it in a way that you don't want the lender to know, right?
And so how does that match with the title company?
Great question. So when you're doing the deed transfer and you're doing a subject to transaction, there's many different ways that you can transfer the deed or record, do the deed recording in a way that doesn't trigger the due on sale clause. So there's two primary ways that you would, as an investor, do a subject to deal. You can do it under your LLC, which increases the risk of a due on sale clause, or you could do what's called a land trust. And when you do a land trust, it is going to be a little bit more costly because you're going to, in most cases, hire an attorney that specializes in creating land trusts so that when the deed gets transferred, right, the way the lender sees the transfers, they say, oh, okay, well, this was done under a trust, so this is really just estate planning. In most cases, it never triggers the due on sale clause because the way the lender looks at the deed recording and the trust, they're automatically assuming it's not a sale, it's just related to estate planning. And that's a way that you can navigate the due on sale clause. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the benefit of doing a subject to deal? Like David had mentioned, you're targeting existing loans that have much better terms than what you can get on the open loan market, right? For example, when I'm targeting deals for subject to, I'm targeting properties that have existing loan terms that are in the 3 to 5% interest rates, right? So that's the benefit. You're not going to have to go out and shop and get a new loan that's going to give you worse terms, that's going to kill the deal and the cash flow that you would get from that deal. That's why you do subject to. Now, the next question you're probably going to ask yourself, Will, is how do you find these deals? You look at properties that have, everyone should write this down. This is going to be a gem. Little to no equity. Agents who are selling deals on the market right now, where listings are on the market for 60 plus days, that have little to no equity, you know why they're not selling? It's because they're trying to overprice that property so that the seller doesn't owe at the closing table. Because when you're factoring in your 6% commission, closing costs, transfer taxes, the seller is going to be underwater at that point. They're most likely going to have to owe at the closing table. So when you see these listings that have been on the market for 60 plus days, you approach the agent and you say, I have a solution where not only you'll get paid your commission, but the seller can walk away with a little bit of money rather than owing money for selling this property, right? And it's a win-win for all parties involved. Then at that point, it just becomes an education game where you're educating the agent on what subject to is, how to do subject to transactions, and then you're also hoping that they can relay that conversation to the seller in a way that allows them to understand how it works, and then you can do the deal that way as well.
Love that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they hear sub two, it's the hot phrase of due on sale, right? Like we just talked about. If somebody doesn't know what that means, can you explain that?
Yeah.
And then I have a follow-up to that. But
yeah, due on sale clause is just, it's an acceleration of paying the outstanding balance on the loan. Simple as that. Lender, they all have the due on, most lenders, if not all, have the due on sale clause where if the property gets sold, deed gets transferred, the entire loan balance is due at sale. That's what a due on sale clause essentially means.
They'll collect their money at the settlement table and you get paid whatever's left after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, so I told you guys how to target potential subject to deals for on-market listings, right? You're targeting listings that have been on the market for 60 plus days, that have little to no equity. The way that you're targeting off-market potential subject to deals is you're targeting sellers that are in pre-foreclosure, right? And you're going to target the pre-foreclosures, right? Because these are sellers who have large arrears, meaning they owe back payments to the lender, right? The auction date may be within 60 days, so they don't have enough time to be able to sell it on the market, right? And so your solution as the investor is, you allow me to take over this loan subject to, I am going to obviously make your loan current by paying the arrears. You'll walk away with some money if your underwriting determines that you can indeed provide some cash to the seller, and you're going to get that property with better terms. So you're going to want to target for off-market, pre-foreclosures, tax defaults. Sellers have to be in pain. So the biggest difference between seller finance and subject to is seller finance associated with gain, subject to associated with pain, right? That's the best way to associate the two. If a seller's having an issue paying their mortgage, pain. Seller finance is, well, I want more money than what you can give me cash. That means they want gain. And that's how you determine which way to go.
So well said. I once heard that you could buy insurance for the due on sale clause or for subject to. Is that true?
That's bullshit.
Interesting.
There was a company that Pace was like recommending to us where how the insurance worked was if the due on sale clause was triggered, they would find you a loan replacement. So essentially, they will connect you with another lender to be able to replace that existing loan. And right now, it's like, well, if you got a subject to deal where the existing loan's like 3.5%, what are they going to replace it with?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, that's just, it unfortunately, it doesn't exist. And if it does, please send it over to me. I would love to see it, like.
One of the things I talk to people a lot about with seller finance specifically is you say, you should do a seller finance and you can pick your own terms. And they go, great. What should I offer them? So what would you recommend?
Never say that. Most people that unless you're talking to really savvy sellers, and sellers are now in this market because seller financing is no longer taboo. It's not a newer conversation. They're having more conversations around it. They're a little bit more savvy, right? But if you talk to ones that just have no clue what you're talking about, you want to use a story that helps them understand, right? And I learned this from Pace and his education. So I tell sellers, I say, hey, I had before I got my Tesla, I had a Honda Accord that I wanted to sell for $9,000. Kelly Blue Book said my car was only worth $4,000. I just put in new brakes, new tires. I wanted $9,000 for the car. Well, when I listed it on Facebook and Craigslist, nobody wanted to buy my car. So I took the listing down and I said, you know what? I'm going to try to relist it, but instead of asking for the full $9,000 up front, I'm going to give the buyer the option to pay me the $9,000 over time. And sure enough, my car got sold like that. You can create that story and apply it for yourself. But that's a way to help the seller understand how seller finance works. Because the seller obviously wants more money than what a traditional cash deal can offer them. So that's how you're helping them to understand the concept of seller finance.
Yeah. One other thing too with seller finance that I absolutely love is it does benefit them. Besides just giving them more money, a lot of people also benefit from the tax advantages. So without going super deep into it, if you buy a property from somebody and they get that lump sum of money, they're most likely paying a lot of tax on that lump sum of money. If you do a seller finance and you give them a smaller chunk for your down pay, and then you structure your payments out the way they can spread that out over the term of the loan, whatever it may be. So it's super advantageous for the seller at the same time in so many different ways. Say it again.
The duration of this seller financing.
You do as the buyer, right? Like, and some sellers would be like, well, what's my protection? Well, you could do a in lieu of foreclosure in the state of Pennsylvania. They would just have to go through the traditional foreclosure process like any other lender would, right? So that's how it would go.
Yep.
But every state's different though. Every state has different foreclosure laws, and wherever you're doing the deal, I would just consult with an attorney based on that market. So yeah.
Do you follow up?
So really, how does it work? Let's say that I'm buying this $100,000 single family row home here, and I've got a lender that is giving me 20% down financing, and I just don't have the down payment. How would I use seller finance and structure it with the lender that I have that's a conventional or a commercial lender, and seller financing, if the seller's willing to finance that down payment, right? Would you use a second position note for that or another tool to structure that in a way that keeps the lender happy, keeps the seller happy, and the buyer protected, where the buyer actually gets the title to the property in the deed?
So we all know lenders, they don't want to be in second position. They want to be in first position, right? So the next part I was going to get to is what's called a hybrid deal. And it's going to go over to like kind of touch on your question. But you have a hybrid deal is a combination of seller finance and subject to, right? So let's just say I'm talking to a seller and they have an existing loan in place, has a balance of $300,000. Good loan terms, 3% interest, whatever. We'll just make it up sound appealing. Then we know the ARV on that property is just say $550,000. Property needs minimal work. Seller's like, I know I have equity in this deal. I'm not just gonna allow you to buy my property via subject to for only $300,000. So then what you can do is you could do a hybrid deal where you would give them the equity, right, on seller finance. So you take over the existing loan for $300,000. Let's say the ARV is $550,000, and you agree with the seller to say, you know what, I'll sell it, finance your equity for another $150,000, right? And you basically just structure your terms of what's advantageous to you as the end buyer, right? But that's called a hybrid deal, where you're taking over the existing loan via subject to on one half, and then you're doing the seller finance on the other half.
Love that. Question.
One more question. Subject to, how are you making the seller feel comfortable? Because the mortgage is staying in the seller's name.
Yeah.
Like, I'm selling you the property, but I'm feeling really nervous. The mortgage is going to stay in my name. And I don't own the property, and you're going to make me.
Yeah, that's a great question. So normally with subject to, sellers are in pain. You're really their last option. And so what you can tell them is, well, I see it, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, you're in pre-foreclosure. You're going to lose your property in auction in less than 60 days. You're worried about a loan not being paid. You're not paying it right now, right? So in doing this transaction, I'm going to bring your loan current. You'll be able to see that the loan has been, reinstated. You're going to be able to walk away with some cash, depending on what the underwriting looks like. And I think in most cases that normally alleviates the concern. Now, there are ways that you can structure the deal where you can put a performance clause in your purchase agreement, and you can set up that performance clause to be structured and serviced with a service company. Where essentially what you can do is, I don't want to get too technical, but like, let's say you don't perform on paying the loan. The property rights can be reverted back to the original seller, right? So you can do that, right? But if you get really complicated with a performance clause, at that point, you're going to have to most likely involve an attorney, or you're going to have to get a transaction coordinator that specializes in structuring creative deals so they can make sure that paperwork is done the right way to satisfy the concern of the seller. But in most cases, when you're dealing with pain, they're desperate. They're not really going to give a fuck about that. Just to be honest, they're more like, please help me. I'm in pain. I need help right now. You know, so
Yeah, it's so good.
yeah.
And one thing I just want to like summarize before we start moving on is just that this stuff applies to small deals and big deals, and we see this all the time.
Yeah.
Any creative finance, and there's no like do this, do that. Like it is whatever you can possibly make up. And we're in negotiations all the time with this kind of stuff, and it can be anything you can think of. A seller carryback, the bank holds 85%, they bring 15%. It could be something where you sell it for X amount just to kind of play the game, but they leave X amount in the deal and you give them a certain return on top of that. Like anything under the sun is possible. It's just what makes sense and how do you structure around what they need.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because like the bigger deals you do, right, from what's been told to me by Pace and the guys that are doing like 100+ unit deals, is like seller financing and creative financing is quite common.
It's so common.
When you get to the bigger deals, because at that point, like they're already used to exchanging assets creatively at the top, So it's really as you get more close to the bottom where it becomes a little bit more taboo and it requires a lot more education in a conversation.
I would even take that one step further and say it's almost normalized now, more so to do it creatively than it is a normal deal. Where like in all the OMs and things like that, they have an assumable mortgage. That's what's pitched to you because that's what makes the deal work.
Yep.
Or hey, they own the property free and clear. Wink, wink. Make them a seller finance offer. Like
Yep.
It is normal now to make that work because everybody knows a lot of the bigger deals do not work at 8%. It's just not going to happen. But
you adapt or die.
Right.
That's what it really comes down to. If you don't, I'm a firm believer that if you don't adopt creative financing across the board within your business, I mean, you're going to lose a lot of deals.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it may be, we see it with a lot of agents who just don't know how to push these listings that have little to no equity. The market is no longer 2020 anymore. We're not COVID pricing and demand. We're not there anymore. And so you got to get creative in how you're pitching these deals.
Love that. All right, couple final questions that we ask every guest.
Yeah.
What separates a top performing investor from the rest of the crowd?
Leveraging new strategies and emerging technologies. What I mean by that is like artificial intelligence, right? Like when we talk about building teams, I'm a firm believer within like 3 years, if not quicker, you could probably replace most of your staff as far as admin work and just tedious researching, conversating through text messaging by leveraging AI and automation. And so if you're not adapting to emerging technology, you're not leveraging new creative strategies, you will be the investor that gets left behind. Like that's really what it's going to come down to.
What's one daily habit that you do that you feel really contributes to your success?
My persistence, I would say. I think in this market, you have to be, I mean, besides discipline, right? Like persistence is going to be key. And the deals it's just a tired saying, but the deals are always in the follow-ups. And so if you're not persistent in doing your follow-ups, you don't have a system in place for contacting a lead that you spoke to a year ago. I'm pretty sure anyone who's been doing this for quite some time, we've gone into our CRM and we've checked on a lead that we spoke to over a year ago and we're like, holy shit, the property sold. I think we've all been there, right? You're like, damn, like I should have reached out to that seller, like everybody. I mean, if you're consistent enough, you have that problem. And so it's like, well, how do I fix that issue? If you're a one-person team, then that's why I talk about AI, right? Like, how do we leverage technology to replicate ourselves, right? And so, yeah, I would say persistence and being open-minded. We don't know what we don't know. Like, try to, even if you're this extremely bright and smart, act like you're the dumbest person. Like I can't even tell you how helpful it is. Even if you think you know a subject matter, when you talk to somebody, you may learn even more by just continuing to have conversations on that subject matter.
Love that. All right. What is a piece of advice that you would give yourself if you're starting again?
That's a great question. Uh, you know what? Don't sign up for every mentorship that you see. Like everybody, the one thing in this space is like people who do like a few deals or like they always act like they're like the next guru, right? Like really pay attention to that. Not everybody is a guru. Not everybody, you should be buying a course from everybody you see. The number one thing that I would say that would have accelerated my growth even faster is collaboration over competition. I realized that over the last year, the power of collaboration. And that really comes part of being in communities, right? If you're going to look into joining a mentorship, if they don't have a powerful community, stay away from it. The reason why like I wave the sub 2 banner is because it is the greatest community, real estate community that I've ever been a part of. I've met my partners. I've met people who are willing to lend on deals, private money lenders. I've met people who are now going to be most likely lifelong friends, right? Like the power of community is everything. And collaboration over competition is everything. For example, like one of my deals that I did to add to my portfolio, I did a seller finance deal and the numbers were amazing. And we're planning on making it a short-term rental in the Poconos. When I went to go visit the property in person, it's a full gut rehab. I am, like I was telling my gentleman here earlier, I'm the anti-handyman. I order something on Amazon, it might be like $200. I'm going to pay a TaskRabbit to build it, or my wife will build it for me, because I'm like the anti-handyman, right? So I look at this property and I'm like, holy shit, this is way out of my league. I have no construction experience. I'm more analytical, marketing, acquisitions based, right? I leverage technology. I just do not know anything about rehab. It's not my expertise. I also knew that I'm going to need a lot of capital to do the construction. This is a 3,000 square foot property, 2 kitchens, 4 bathrooms, 5 bedrooms. This property's humongous. It has 3 decks, right? And I'm like, man, I'm going to need well over 6 figures for the construction and furnishing. So I need private money, and I need someone that has the construction experience to do this rehab. So I looked within my community and I said, hey guys, I need help. I structured this killer deal as far as really good seller financing terms, but I need help realizing the vision of this property. So within the sub 2 community, I found my partner who's managing the construction side of the project, who has construction experience, and he's a rock star in himself. I found a short-term rental operator that manages and operates short-term rentals all across the country. And I found my other partner that was able to raise the private money for the deal. All I did was find a deal, structure the deal, get good terms, and I just plugged in everyone else into the deal that essentially helped mask my weakness. Right? So there's a great book that I recommend everybody should read. It's called Rocket Fuel, where they talk about the who, not the how. Right? Just because you don't know how to hit a hammer, right, doesn't mean you can't scale and do real estate at a high level. Find those who can essentially, do what you need them to do as far as the deal is concerned.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is just a testament to rooms like this, being in the right room where everybody is open to helping each other and just pitching in and giving you ideas, referrals, whatever it is. Everything that I have learned and everything that I've done, I contribute to going to meetups, meeting the right people, and just being in the right place at the right time. And thankfully, having the best people around. So, couldn't say it.
Networking and community is everything.
The one thing you just said that really struck a chord with me is collaboration, not competition. All right, because what I'll do is we'll lead out with our outro here. Okay, every single person here has something to offer. Every single person here has something that they need. Right? Nobody comes here just to hang out and talk about real estate, except for, well, there's a few of us out there. Right? But just do it out of habit now. But that's what originally brings everybody together. All right, cool. So back to you, Cole.
All right. Well, look, that's going to wrap us up. We're going to head to networking again. We have food, we have drink, hit the bar. Please relax. We'll be here all night. But let's give Steven a round of applause. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, thank Gary, who is not here, for everything putting this on. So I can connect you with him as well. So please come and see me. But that's it. Please hang out.
Thank you. Thank you.